Hey everybody, welcome back. So hope you guys had a good weekend, whatever that means in the current terms, what it means to have a weekend. But hope you guys have been doing all right and things are good. Yeah, so I really enjoyed reading your discussion posts. Sorry I didn't get to them super fast. Got caught up with things around here, but I really enjoyed hearing about your own dreams, the way you analyze them. I thought everybody did a really good job around that. I thought it was really cool to see you guys bring together, the ideas of Jung with your own lives. Because that's what it's all about. Jung would say, it's not about some abstract thing. It's not about somebody else. Myths and dreams, they're all about us. They're all about ourselves. And you guys seem to have gotten that really clearly and figured that out pretty quick. So that's really cool to see. Yeah, today what I want to do is look a little bit more at Carl Jung and talk some more, give some more examples of his ideas to give us some more practice there. One thing I want to do is do an analysis of The Wizard of Oz based on Jung's ideas, based on some passages from the book, and then maybe after that look at some more different stories you could use Jung's ideas on. So yeah, things to think about. Um, okay, trying to think if there's anything else that we want to mention. I think now is when the Jung quiz is going to be due. I think it's going to be due um, uh, either today or Thursday. And other than that, um, oh, there's a little video for Carl Jung. So one of the discussion topics for today is on the Carl Jung video, and there he talks a little bit more about the subconscious, and you hear some other people talk about just kind of Jung's ideas in general, just a sort of basic refresher on everything that Jung's all about. And he makes some strong claims, so I'll be interested to see what you guys think of what Jung says in that video. Apologies that the subtitles are in French. No, sorry, Portuguese, I think, rather than English. But that's just the only copy I could find. But yeah, let me know what you think of that video. Okay. So now, yeah, let's dig into The Wizard of Oz. Let's talk about it. Let's think about how would we analyze a story like this from a Jungian perspective? Because we already looked at it from a prop perspective. We've got we've got the heroine, female hero, and we've got the three helpers, and we've got the villain, the wicked witch. We've got all that stuff going on, and we've got Glinda maybe as a helper, the wizard maybe as a false hero. That was props version of things. So we can also analyze the story from a different perspective, from a Jungian perspective as well. So we should ask the question, you know, if we treat this story like a fairy tale, because it's very like a fairy tale, then can we open it up to that sort of thing, to analyzing it from Jung's perspective? And so here's the trick: it's just like analyzing your own dream. Only the difference between analyzing a dream and analyzing a story, whether that's a work of fiction or a myth or a fairy tale, for Jung, the only difference is you have to figure out who the dreamer is. So you are imagining the story is happening to one of its characters as if one of the characters was having a dream and everybody else in the dream was sort of characters from that person's mind, aspects of that person's own self, which is a pretty cool idea. And what do you know? Wizard of Oz is kind of perfect for that, because that's the whole thing in the story is, was it a dream? We don't know. It's kind of ambiguous, but it seems like these concepts are coming out of Dorothy's own mind, would be one way to interpret the story already. So this is just perfect for using Jung's method. So, like I said, to decide how the story goes, we first have to decide on the dreamer. So the dreamer for this Dorothy. Dorothy, did I say that out loud? That was a Jungian slip right there, rather than a Freudian slip. Yeah, it's Dorothy. The dreamer for this story is Dorothy. Or maybe that's where we want to start anyway, because usually when you're taking a story, you want to go with the protagonist, at least to start. So let's say dreamer equals Dorothy. Okay, so that way we can define the other characters in the story in terms of their relationship to Dorothy. How do they interact with her, and what do they represent for her? If this is all Dorothy's dream, what would that dream mean for her own life? So, it's good to think a little bit biographically about the dreamer, even if the dreamer is a fictional character, because that fictional character will stand for things that people experience in their own lives. So we might say we are like Dorothy in some way. We learn from her example. We learn from her story. We have similar experiences to the one she's gone through. So yeah. So what's Dorothy's life like? She's young. She's a kid, but she's not a baby. She's growing up. She's kind of on the cusp of growing up, which is where a lot of fairy tales have their protagonists be. So that makes sense. And what are some of the problems she's concerned about? Basically, she feels like she's not appreciated at home, and she dreams of escaping into a fantasy land where she can't get into any trouble or where things are magically somehow better. And it's kind of interesting to think that maybe the fantasy land she escapes into, her subconscious, is also her subconscious, is a part of her own mind. And we're going to see a lot more of that with Joseph Campbell, the idea of sort of escaping into your own subconscious. So that's Dorothy, and of course she wants to protect Toto, her little dog, from the evil lady who she knows. So all of that is going on. And so bear in mind that she's, coming of age, she's thinking about adulthood, and most of the people she meets in the story are adults. So that should strike us as significant as well. Okay, so let's think about the other characters. So probably the best one to start with is the shadow. And the book says there's kind of a pattern that goes something like shadow, animus, ideal self. That maybe the shadow is one of the best ones to start with, and then you get into more of the other ones later on. So who are we going to pick for our shadow for Dorothy? Who's most like a shadow? Remember, the shadow is something that is frightening, but may also, be something you can learn from. Villains are often a good choice for the shadow. So I think we could make an argument for, let's see if I have her here. Her specific wit, the Wicked Witch, makes a pretty good, oh boy, technical difficulties, they'll get you every time. Let's see. Okay, we're back. Okay, yeah, so that's the Wicked Witch, and probably the Wicked Witch of the West, but also the one of the East as well, that she kills with her house before the story even really fully gets started. And maybe also, we said with our prop version of this that the characters are all equivalent. Miss Gulch, the evil lady who acts like a witch and is in fact played by the same actress, they all could be shadow selves for Dorothy. But okay, if they're shadow selves for Dorothy, what part of Dorothy are they trying to represent? Well, let's think about Miss Gulch, and we kind of need to go into the sort of old sexist thinking of the time. Is that Miss Gulch is this older woman who is not married and seems to be kind of bitter and alone. She seems to be sort of evil and nasty and grumpy all the time. So she might represent Dorothy's fear of becoming a grumpy adult. Fear that when she grows up, she's going to turn into kind of a witchy, sort of bad person. Miss Gulch makes a good pick for the shadow, and the witch makes a good pick for the shadow, also because it's the same gender as Dorothy. So the same gender and being the shadow is something that Jung says is usually going on in these stories. She provides this sort of negative example for Dorothy, and so does the witch. The witch is grumpy, maybe also greedy, evil, aggressive, maybe. She keeps saying, "I'll get you." So these are all things that Dorothy could fear that she's going to become, and she wants to be not causing anybody any trouble. So maybe she's afraid of, causing problems because her aunt always says that she's causing problems. And maybe you could put Auntie M in here as well, because Auntie M, she loves her, but she's also hard on her. And, is sort of intense and serious in the way that a farmer growing up in the Dust Bowl would be. Life is hard. So Dorothy doesn't want to become bitter or old or jaded. So those are all the things that Dorothy's shadow could represent. But also, the book makes a really interesting argument about Glinda. So what do we think about Glinda? We could argue that Glinda represents an ideal self because she's this beautiful fairy tale princess, so she's this feminine archetype that Dorothy can identify with and say, you know, I want to grow up to be like her. And she's pretty and she's beautiful and she helps Dorothy out. But the book also says that Glinda works as a shadow in the early part of the story. And that's kind of weird, but the argument that they give for this is that she tries to help Dorothy, but she can't fully help Dorothy. So she is impotent. She is unable to make a difference in the early part of the story. But the later part of the story, Glinda is able to help Dorothy. And I don't think it's a coincidence that it's right at that moment that Dorothy helps herself. That what does Glinda say? It was inside you. Or it was with you. The way to get home that Dorothy was looking for, Glinda tells Dorothy that was inside of Dorothy. So Glinda is very much the ideal self right there because she's an extension of what Dorothy is. So Glinda, in a very dream sort of fashion, is opening up the logic of things to show that the dream works in this certain way, that the dream is coming from Dorothy herself. That's what she reveals to Dorothy, is that all this is coming from Dorothy. So that Dorothy is really the one who has the power. So if Dorothy is helped by Glinda, it's also true that Dorothy is helped by Dorothy. So that makes perfect sense according to Jung's type of logic here. Okay, and how about and we notice that comes at the end of the story, just kind of like this pattern that the book is talking about here. So let's put our next thing in the middle. How about animus or anima figures? Well, as much as we might want to explore anima figures, Dorothy's a girl, and usually, at least in more traditional stories, girls have animus figures. They're thinking about men, and they're trying to understand what's their relationship to men. So who do we have for animus figures? I think we can all guess at who those might be. Folks. The Lion, the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow. And so the Lion, the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow, they are these positive male figures in Dorothy's life. And the animus can be either positive or negative, but they seem to be all very positive to Dorothy. They help her out. They're her wonderful best friends. They love her and care about her. They support her no matter what. You know, they're all very good guys. And they're all adults, which is weird but maybe interesting in how weird it is. We said that the animus figure is about who you're attracted to. It's your own sort of if you're a woman, masculine qualities of the men that your ideas about men, and also your own sort of positive male virtues, assertiveness, and things like that. Those things are sort of a part of you, but they're also how you interpret men. And so the animus is kind of about your boyfriend, and it's kind of about your dad. It's a way of thinking about men. So you get those ideas of men from your father, and then you sort of turn them outward in relationships and in the way you interact with stories and things like that, to think about, what kind of qualities do you value in a man? What's important to you? So Dorothy is pretty young. So I would describe these three as like fantasy boyfriends, basically. They are very non-sexual. They just love her and take care of her. So one, that makes the movie actually work as a good story. And two, that's what she would want at this age, is men who are going to be loving and supportive towards her and take care of her no matter what. There isn't like an explicit romantic or sexual thing in the story, but there doesn't have to be, because it's more about what does Dorothy think about men and what is her relationship to these men. Okay, I will meet you guys in the next video where we continue this line of thought.